How will cruising change coming out of COVID? Well, in this video, I'm going to break down what you can expect when cruising restarts again here in the US, as well as my prediction on when cruising will resume. My name is Ben Tennis, pronounced just like the game tennis, and I own and run my own travel agency. And my goal here is to provide travelers just like you travel information and travel resources to help you plan your next vacation. So if you're new here checking me out for the first time, consider subscribing. To give you a visual representation of what cruising might look like here in the US, I'm going to be showing you video clips from Royal Caribbean's Quantum of the Seas, which is currently in Singapore right now, conducting cruises to, well, nowhere. Meaning there are no port of calls. You are just going straight out to sea and coming right back. These cruises are lasting 2 to 4 days, and it will most likely resemble what it will be like here when cruising restarts here in the US. So if you're considering going on a cruise potentially later this year, hopefully this video will give you some insight and some details about what cruising will look like once it resumes, and hopefully you make a decision on whether or not a cruise is right for you at this time. So let's say you decided to go ahead and book that cruise for later this year, and you're wondering what's next, what happens after that. Well, the first thing the cruise line is going to do is send you detailed information about what to do before you travel to the ship, when you arrive at the terminal, and what the screening requirements are going to be. And they will also provide you with a pre-departure checklist, providing you with sanitation and hygiene products that you will consider bringing on the ship. So let's talk about the check-in and embarkation process. On the day of your trip, you will need to check in for your cruise through the cruise line app. Expect staggered guest arrivals at embarkation terminals to allow for social distancing. Ships will undergo thorough sanitation and disinfection prior to, throughout, and following each embarkation. Your luggage will also be sanitized prior to boarding, and once you have completed the itemized checklist on the app, you will then receive your boarding pass. And once you have arrived at the terminal at the scheduled time that the cruise line has given you, you will then receive your first temperature check upon entering the main terminal area. Anyone who plans on embarking a ship will have to undergo enhanced pre-embarkation health screenings, including health questionnaires, touch-free temperature checks, as well as having to submit a negative COVID test result between 5 days and 24 hours before boarding. A second test at embarkation may also be required. Anyone who has had a positive test within 14 days prior to departure will be denied boarding, as well as any of their close contacts. Passengers with pre-existing medical conditions may be required to provide a fit-to-travel form from their doctor. And once you board the ship, you have to scan your SeaPass and be subject to another temperature check. Temperature checks will be required anytime you enter or leave the ship, as well as before all meals in the dining venues and before all activities in the public venues. Hand sanitizing stations will be located all throughout the ship. In addition, it's important to note that the cruise lines have also installed HEPA filtration systems, which is a medical-grade H13 HEPA filters that will remove 99.95% of airborne pathogens. Also, there will be additional medical resources, meaning there will be onboard medical centers that will be fully equipped with the latest testing kits and testing supplies, and there will also be designated cabins or even decks where the crew can isolate passengers or quarantine passengers who might be infected or come in contact with COVID passengers. And there will also be a onboard critical care center as well. So let's talk about the muster drill now. There's been a change to it. You will now be able to access essential safety information through the new eMuster or Muster 2.0 technology via your own mobile or smartphone device, as well as on the interactive stateroom TVs in your own room. And can we just pause for a moment and acknowledge what fantastic news this is? Those of you who have cruised before know exactly what I'm talking about. The muster drill is probably the least favorite thing to do on a cruise, and all that has changed for the better. And this should be a permanent change, so we should not have to worry about it going back to the way it was pre-COVID. So once you've completed the muster drill, you will take it over to a representative who will scan and verify that you have indeed completed it, and also give you a sticker showing that you have met the requirements for the muster drill. So let's talk about what the activities on board the ship are going to look like. Most likely you're going to have to make a reservation for any activity that you want to do on the ship. And as you can see here, the kids area, mask will be required at all times, as well as thorough hand washing prior to entering the play area. And once in the play area, you'll see that there'll be spaces marked out for which kids can stand. So they have that social distancing spacing for them as well. As far as the pool is concerned, there will be limited pool capacity. All the lounge chairs will be spaced out, and you will not need to wear a mask while you're in the pool, but you will be required to wear a mask while outside the pool in the lounge chairs. Theater performances on board the ship will still take place, just at a reduced capacity. However, you will need to make a reservation in order to view a live performance. Mask wearing will also be required. There will be no changes or modifications to any of the performances that you see. You'll see some of the performers wearing masks themselves. And then afterwards, the whole entire theater will be sprayed and sanitized thoroughly, just in time for the next performance. Casinos will continue to operate as normal. The only difference here is that you'll see machines blocked off to allow for social distancing, and as soon as someone leaves the machine, it will be thoroughly clean and sanitized for the next person to use. So moving on to dining. Before you enter any dining establishment, you'll need to wash your hands before entering the area. And then no longer are there self-serve buffets. You will need to tell the staff what food you'd want, and they would plate it for you. So think of it like a Subway or Chipotle line where you're telling the waitstaff what food you want. So sit-down dining works just as you'd expect it to work. You see the tables or chairs blocked off to allow for spacing. And then as soon as someone gets up, immediately the waitstaff comes and clears off the table and sanitizes it and gets it ready for the next group of people to sit down. Again, reservations will be required for sit-down dining. Also, something else you might be familiar with is there are no paper menus. There will be QR codes on the table that will allow you access to view the restaurant menus. And as you would expect, the ship is thoroughly sanitized on a continuous basis, especially for high traffic and high touch areas, including desks, elevators, and handrails throughout the ship. And of course, your stateroom will also be thoroughly fogged and sanitized between each guest stay. So as cruising reestablishes itself, here's some things that you can expect. For the time being, shorter sailings, they might be starting out at 2 to 5 days, and then maybe they start pushing out to 7 days if everything is successful. And then they will start opening up possibly some ports. Now, most of the cruise lines have their own private islands, so you could expect to go to one of their islands at first, where they have tons of activity that you can do there. And they can also maintain that private bubble that can control the environment much more than going to a port. Now, as long as that is good, they will start opening some ports that you can go visit. But that will depend on the controlling government, whether they want to allow cruise ships onto their country or not. So that's kind of a wait and see kind of thing. Now you might be asking, what about shore excursions? Shore excursions will be limited to just the cruise line shore excursions. You won't be able to do a third-party shore excursion, at least for now. If you do try to participate in one, you will get kicked off the ship. So just be forewarned about that. And as I wrap up this video, you might be asking the question, will cruise lines require passengers to be vaccinated in order to sail with them? And that is still being discussed right now. I know at least one cruise ship in Europe, Saga Cruises, is requiring passengers to be vaccinated, as well as 3 American cruise ship companies. One is the Victory Cruises, and another one is the American Steamboat Company. And then one of the major cruise lines that you probably would have heard of is Crystal Cruises. At the time of this video, they announced that they would be requiring all passengers to be vaccinated before they would board their ships. Now, will other cruise lines join them? That remains to be seen. And that leads me to my last question, which is, when do I think cruising will resume again in the U.S.? And from the information I've been hearing, they expect the COVID vaccine, to be available to everyone who wants one by July. And I know the cruise lines want all their crew and staff members to be vaccinated before they will sail again. So I believe that time frame would put it in the August through October time frame before cruising would resume. That's just my prediction. Don't hold me to it. That's just my guess, my best guess of what things will happen. So I hope you found value in this video. Hopefully it gave you some insight of what cruising might look like when it returns back to the U.S. And comment below, do you plan on doing a cruise this year or not? I just want to thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.